Al Thompson, first of all, thanks for reviewing my men's book. It's a work in progress, and I really am excited to have veterans that have been in real military situations also look at it. And I'd love to get your input in your journey as maturing as a man, and how you stayed connected to the guys, and and also any views of how society can support veterans too, because so in many ways that is a rites of passage that was available for many men, is the military, and you lived through it and luckily survived it, so we could talk about it.
Well, I think the first thing that I would talk about is military families also serve. I'm talking spouses and children. For the first almost 17 years, my dad was military, and particularly the last 6 years, he was gone most of the time. So there's a lot of stresses on families with the separations. Everyone knows they're there, but sometimes they're very untimely. Biggest transition I had that I could not manage was actually going to high school and moving. It's a very tough time to move. So I went to 18 different schools, made 22 different changes, went back to 4 for the 4 additional changes. That was perhaps somewhat common at that time, maybe not quite that high a number, but close in many cases. But as I approached high school, it became a real problem trying to navigate changes in advanced studies that were getting you ready for college. So when my father mentioned that we were going to move again, I said, Dad, I'd like to go in the Army. So that's what I did.
Right.
Dropped out of high school, went in the Army, and settled down in there. Found myself a little bit. The other thing about your book that I would say is that most of us haven't come from a perfect family.
Right.
So there are other people that we could draw back in our memories that served as either a father or a mother figure or a close adult, someone we could look up to. I think that's important for us as we look back for some healing. Where we think that we've been cheated out of life. And I grew up at a time when those family shows, the perfect families, were on television, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Right. You look
TV.
At what I have and what is, and they don't match, right?
Yeah, they don't match. So I think it's really important to reflect on the things that could maybe solidify that part of your picture.
It's very important because in the book I'm talking about the 4 components I perceive are important to support a man to mature. And it's so important to understand it doesn't work out in perfect order. It doesn't matter how you get the pieces. If you need the pieces, you get them. And you talked a little bit about that yourself. You knew some things were missing, and they came in different stages over life. And some came, first of all, the move you mentioned was so important. Is, again, when we think of veterans, we need to understand the men and women are serving directly. We need to understand the spouses and partners that are left at home. And we need to understand the kids as well. Yeah. And really the community, because everyone's affected by this. And everyone's needed to support this. And so I want to first acknowledge that is real important that we all keep that in mind. And there's been some good work now, I think, starting to acknowledge spouses and family that I don't remember when I was younger. It was there.
Doing a lot better job, and I think that first thing, there's only about 1% of the population that's directly involved with the military. So it's a very small, minuscule minority. And so when I discuss the military, sometimes at public, they think it's nice, we ought to do something, but it doesn't really emotionally affect them.
Yeah.
So that's an important piece. But today's service, there's a lot of strain on less people. And the deployments are just back to back. They're in the
They're
States,
longer.
That's a big
thing.
More frequent.
Right.
So first or second time, that's a challenge.
Right.
By the 4th or 5th time, there are some major stresses that are going on that people do need to pay attention to. And I think that the nation, the military system, the active duty system, should pay as much attention as we possibly can to our vets.
Excellent. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the components I bring up in the book and let you share your perspectives on it. Because one of the things I say is the importance of active mothering and fathering. But what I mean by that is getting them if you need them. It doesn't mean everyone has to have this. It's just maybe you need to notice if something's missing in doing it. And though your dad was of service and you appreciate what he did, he wasn't around as well. And you kind of got some of those pieces from, was it an uncle or a grandfather, or was it in the military? Some of what you call what I call the father, support.
Well, I think so. And I looked at some of the non-commissioned officers. My father was an NCO that were similar in background. I attached to them a little bit because they became somewhat of a father figure. But there's no closeness in terms of a personal relationship.
Right.
So yes, sergeant, no sergeant, and that's about it, and you get out of their face. Right. But they provide a decent example, and that's what we're all looking for, I think, is people that we want to become somewhat like.
Right.
At some point, you have to understand who you are, and that comes a little later.
Right.
And so, in the end, I wanted to be like my dad, being in the service, but then I knew I was different and brought out different strengths, and I recognized some weaknesses along the way that were different from his, but I became my own man. But that takes a while.
Well, there's several things. To me, part of the role of father, effectively, is setting the boundaries and really pushing challenges. So you're taking calculated risks. So some of these men might have done that for you. You didn't feel like warmth or anything, but part of the role of dad is we got to get you to survive independently in society, and understanding a little bit non-verbally what it is to have a body filled with testosterone. And I guarantee if I talk to the guys, they might not spell it out to it, but they knew what you were going through in a sense. And there is a piece of that.
I think part of that also is we need to look out for those bad examples or those false trials, rites of passage that some things are just bogus. They can really take you down a wrong lane, such as a gang or other not really great ideas. You've got to start to think about picking and choose. At some point, you have to man up.
Yeah, right.
And
and take responsibility for what happened in your life. Because the problem is, if you don't, doesn't mean you're to blame. You're just saying, this is my past. I'm owning this. It's hard to heal something you can't take ownership of. And I think that's an important piece as well. And I'm just speaking from observation, not as a professional in any way. But I know for myself, I had even my own kind of criticism, my parents and my own. And I went, wait a second. The only one losing out of this is me. I need to own it. This is what I have. And either I own it, or I give all my power away to that story. And I think this is an important piece that you've done. And also you put, what I liked is, I think part of your own healing and completing and identification was finding your activity of writing your book too.
That was on another level.
Yeah.
But to look back, I actually used the voice of a teenager in it.
I
really try to go back in my mind. What did it feel like? What did I see? Sometimes for the first time. And so that's, I think, what is the magic of the book. The other component for me was when I came home, I stayed pretty close to my dad. I lived in the same town for about a year or so. And because we had a common experience, soldier to soldier, as well as father-son, we understood each other better.
Yeah.
Had a lot of coffee and talked. In fact, my first civilian job after I left the military, I wanted to be with him in a factory. And I had no interest in the factory, but I just wanted to have lunch with my dad, at noon lunch. And so it brought a lot of completion to that area. So that proactivity, you might say, in a sense. And I think he understood that we needed to complete a few things man to man together.
Well, the other piece I want to say is men's communication doesn't always happen in words. And I think we assume it must. I think there's a lot of unspoken occurred over that coffee. That if I could talk to your dad and he had the language for it, he would notice it. But that's an important piece as well, that it's not always in words. And part of that is learning to interact with men to learn the unspoken words. and value it. So I think there was something in that as well that happened for you too. And then the other thing I liked you said was just you're evolving and maturing to that security that you really started to value and appreciate women. You know, young men, he's full of testosterone, and there's a pretty girl there, and everything's surging for him, and that's the next level of it. It sounds like, of course you should, but no, we didn't all start that way, and I think that was another maturing a rites of passage that occurred to it.
I think that women can inform us a lot as far as being a man.
Yeah.
You know, they as they express themselves, and they perhaps sometimes are more expressive, but they get the message across. If you'll listen and if you'll observe, that you can develop some wonderful relationships, which I did early on after that.
And I think that's something that's later on too as well. So not only our mothers, but the women in our lives, their contribution, if we're allowing it to happen, to evolve, mature, and grow as a human being.
I think I'm growing today. I just turned 70.
Yeah.
And I've never been 70 before. So at each decade, you know, there's some new challenges out there that we deal with. But also I like the conversation that we have generation to generation. Mm-hmm. Because I can respect somebody seeing something for the first time and be excited about that with them. Let them tell their story. Mm-hmm. Yeah, appreciate that. And it usually reciprocates, and that's kind of fun. But we're all on this journey together.
And the reason I wanted to work in this book was really I had great parents, and I noticed after my practice marriage ended, my first marriage ended, there was something missing for me in my relationship with other men. You know, friendships and stuff that I might have had when I was younger were gone, and they had dissipated. And I actually read the book Iron John. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it was kind of talking about initiation of men and issues. I went, there's something missing here. And if I don't find the pieces and work on it, I'm going to miss out on it. And that's when I led my first men's group and started working with it. I just want us to get together and have a conversation. And what I noticed in it is people just seem to assume, men just get together and comfortably have meaningful conversations. And I realized how confrontive it was to do that. You know, that took a little time for it to evolve. And and it doesn't mean you have to say a lot, but that was real important to me to develop. And I've seen in you keeping in touch with other veterans that it feels like you kind of look out for each other, you stay connected, you both went through an experience that I have no reference point of that. You know, I have no battlefield experience of it. That also is an important piece to keep those male friendships alive, or those relationships alive too. Would you talk a little bit about that and your experience?
Well, my persona actually developed as in the service as far as the adulthood, you might say. I was a medic, a combat medic, and I would go in with 30 guys, and my mission was to bring 30 guys back healthy. Mm-hmm. Whatever situation that we were in. And it wasn't always a military conflict. There were just sicknesses, etc., like that. But I found that I could be very masculine and be very caring at the same time. Mm-hmm.
And that was part of building your role as in the team. And
right.
I do believe that's important for men to find kind of, I call it their place in the tribe.
Right.
Like, I contribute this. Right now, I'm the best guy to contribute this.
Well, if somebody's injured, then they expect you to stand out there and get her done.
Yeah, right. And if there was no one else around, so you were the best guy, you know? and so I do think that's something important for us, is to find what is our role in the tribe as one of the components. And that's kind of where you found your place with it.
Right. And then recently, within the last 15 years, I was a hospital chaplain for 10 years. Cool. And bedside manner, talking to people that are sick was just kind of ran that course, and it was just a natural for me. Yeah. But I found that to be very fulfilling, and it seemed to be good for the patients, because I always got pretty good reviews from the hospital staff, etc. So I really enjoyed that. Everybody's got a niche out there, and so you need to find that. But I think you do need some help and good feedback from people that you can trust. If you're not good at something, you need to leave it alone.
Well, I want to get that. That's also the importance of allowing people to contribute to you. You got to pick someone. You may need to set boundaries, but let them contribute to you. And that's, to me, one of the final stages of maturing is mentoring and mastery. If you don't find a way to, it's a kind of funny word, but I call it surrender to mastery and learning something. You don't get the next level of food. You worked with someone, they mentored you, they helped you out, and that, I got a lot of value. Now, mine was learning massage from Scotty Young. This guy, I wanted to learn how to heal with my hands and work with it, and up close and personal, and face what is that like? What is the experience with it? And I think that's another important thing that many of us as men need, is that the example in Star Wars would be Obi-Wan and the Yoda and stuff. But that's when you're wrestling with it, you're up close, and that kind of delayed gratification, learning about mastery, learning to trust someone to say, no, you need to do it this way. Try this first. And you probably had some of that as well.
I think so, but to me, it's like a generational timeline. I'm looking up, I'm looking down, and I'm looking across, and we're all out there for each other, I think. And I could pretty well recognize today, somebody at least means well.
Right.
Or are they trying to pick my pocket? But for the most part, everybody's pretty good. Most people are pretty honest and will share. And I'll see a quality about another man or any person, even a lady, something that they're doing. They could be very disciplined about something, or, and try to find out, well, how did you get there?
Right.
I'd like to be a little bit more like that.
Right.
Yeah, share that with me. And often people will.
Well, you wrote a book. If someone wants to know about it, would you be kind enough to mention the book? And it's kind
called
of a niche.
On the Currahee Trail. Currahee is Cherokee for We Stand Alone or Stand Alone, and that was our battalion's motto. The 506 was originally known as the Band of Brothers, World War II, and we restruck the colors for Vietnam, but Band of Brothers, people
of course they know that. So there's a historical tie line to Band of Brothers.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the help, talk about help, I have probably 20 people on my phone that I can call 24/7, including my battalion surgeon from 50 years ago. Yeah. And he'd be there for me.
And
or vice versa.
I just want to acknowledge that's not just you having that, that's you doing the work to keep it alive. There's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street.
And you've done it. Acknowledge that. That's important for me. If some man wants that, he's going to have to work to earn that, and he's going to have to work to participate in it. And then that will be there for him. And that's an important piece I had to learn.
Yes.
Any closing advice you have for young men that are watching this or learning or anything else? Or you want to add on your journeys other than read your book, learn some stuff?
Well, I remember giving a talk to prisoners,
and
I was surrounded by probably 300 prisoners and I was getting a little bit uptight because the guards were on the other side of them. I mean, it's a prison, behind steel walls, and got to thinking for a little bit, and then I finally approached it. I said this way: when you get outside, there's a ton of people out there that would like to help you if you'll just ask for some help, and look interested. And they won't all have the solution for you, but they'll have bits and pieces of that solution. So when you walk out of these walls, there's help out there, and you can connect with it, and I'm one of those. Yeah, but I'm just one of those. There are many, many more besides me. What great advice. And that, to me, is let them contribute to you, because that takes some courage, too. And that's excellent. What great advice. Well, thanks so much for a few words. Thanks he gave some input on my book, on the journey. I'll put a link to his book as well, and I appreciate it. It's great. And we're also in Toastmasters, which we like very much. Very much. So take care. Thanks.